Representative Kylie.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thanks for being here today, Mr. Richardson. I'd like to talk with you briefly about a very simple action that the President and FEMA could take that would come at a relatively modest cost, would make an enormous difference for many people in my district, and would reverse an enormous wrong committed by President Joe Biden.
Welcome back to America First, Patriots. If this is your first time here, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe, because we're bringing you the unfiltered truth that the mainstream media won't tell you. Today, we're diving into a congressional hearing that perfectly illustrates everything that's wrong with the federal bureaucracy and how the Biden administration completely failed the American people.
It relates to the Calder Fire, which you might be familiar with. The Calder Fire was one of the biggest fires in California history. It was in 2021, and you might remember the images that were really surreal of the ski slopes that were on fire and were ablaze. The blaze came very close to actually destroying the entire town of South Tahoe, which I represent. Fortunately, there was legislation that had created a categorical exclusion for fire mitigation that had allowed for a fire break to be created, and we were able to stop it from going into South Tahoe. But folks in the community of Grizzly Flats were not so fortunate. Hundreds of homes there were destroyed in 2021. The fire was so massive that Joe Biden actually came and visited shortly after, and did a tour in a helicopter, and then he made a promise to the victims in Grizzly Flat that he was going to help, that the federal government would support them. He said it was a federal responsibility. He then broke that promise. Joe Biden's FEMA denied individual assistance to the victims of the Calder Fire in Grizzly Flats on multiple occasions. I spoke with the president about it personally, and he said he wanted to correct the wrong. He never did. And so these folks now, several years later, many continue to suffer with the rebuilding process. Many are still just camped out in RVs or trailers on their property, and they still have not received the individual assistance that they're entitled to. So FEMA, under President Biden, as I mentioned, denied this multiple times. But the president has the authority to grant the assistance himself. And in fact, President Trump did this during his first term for multiple wildfires in California. So my question is this something that you might be able to look into and talk with the president about to finally get the victims of the fire in the Calder Fire, the victims in Grizzly Flats, the individual assistance they deserve?
Yeah, I can go both ways on that. I can talk to, and thank you for the question. I can talk to Region 10, Bob Fenton, and I can also reach out to the White House, find out where the Delta is, and then get back to you with the potential way forward.
I really appreciate that. And I think that, there's also room to look at the process by which these determinations are made within FEMA, because, one of the things, for example, that they used in their analysis, even though there are bigger wildfires where folks have gotten the individual assistance, they, for example, looked at the income level in El Dorado County as a whole, which is where Grizzly Flats is. Even though Grizzly Flats itself is not by any stretch of the imagination a wealthy area, but they counted the overall median income of the county against the people who lost their homes within this particular jurisdiction. There's a lot of arbitrary things like that that just don't make sense. But at the end of the day, this is a promise that the President of the United States, Joe Biden, made to the people in our community, and then he broke that promise. And I'm really hopeful that the President, if he has the ability to do so, can right that wrong.
I'll reach out to Region 9, I'll reach out to Region 10, and then I'll be able to get back with you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Yield back. Yield to the chair, in fact.
I thank the gentleman. Regarding the issue of call time, I just want to reference the New York Times article, which apparently was the source for the dispute over how many people actually received an answer on the call. And according to the article, it says, according to a person briefed on the matter who spoke on the condition of anonymity. Now, like I've said before, we all have, I think, reasonable criticisms of and valid criticisms of FEMA, but on this occasion, I just want to make sure we're not making judgments based on people that spoke on condition of anonymity. And further in the article, it says the agency did publish similar data on October 29, 2024, which I'll remind everybody was during the last administration, during President Biden's administration, days after Hurricane Helene barreled across the South and nearly 3 weeks after Hurricane Milton hit Florida. That information showed the agency did not answer nearly half of the 507,766 incoming calls over the course of a week, E&E News reported. With that having been said, Mr. Administrator, can you, like I said, I think we all want to level set here. People on both sides of the aisle would like to know the efficacy of the call center and the response to people calling in for disasters. Can FEMA provide that information and the source of that information moving forward? Can we get a report on that so that we can know how well FEMA is performing in that paradigm?
So this how I'll answer that, Mr. Chairman. I think we can legally share that with you. I think we can, okay? I don't know for sure, but if we can, we will. I do know that we surged support.
Yeah, I understand. I think that both sides of the aisle would like again, to level set and know what that information is and the source of that information. And if there's some reason that you can't do it legally, we would like to know that as well so we can take whatever action is appropriate here in Congress.
Yes.
All right.
I'll fully cooperate.
Thank the gentleman. The chair now.
What you just witnessed in that hearing is Representative Kylie exposing one of the most disgraceful betrayals of American citizens I've seen in years. We're talking about the 2021 Calder Fire in California, one of the biggest fires in the state's history. This fire destroyed hundreds of homes in Grizzly Flats. And these weren't mansions of Hollywood elites. These were working-class Americans who lost everything. Here's what really gets my blood boiling. Joe Biden himself flew out there in his helicopter, looked these devastated families in the eye, and promised them federal assistance. He said it was a federal responsibility. The man made a direct promise to American citizens who had just lost their homes, their life savings, their memories, everything. And then what happened? FEMA, under Biden's watch, denied the request for individual assistance not once, not twice, but multiple times. Let me put this in perspective for you. We're talking about families who are still living in RVs and trailers on their own property years later because they can't afford to rebuild without the federal assistance they were promised. Meanwhile, this same administration has been sending billions upon billions of dollars overseas to foreign countries while American citizens are literally homeless on their own land. The representative made an excellent point about President Trump's approach to these disasters. During Trump's first term, he actually followed through on promises to wildfire victims in California. He understood that when Americans are in crisis, you help Americans first. It's that simple. But under Biden, we saw the complete opposite of America First principles. What's even more infuriating is how FEMA made their determination. They looked at the median income of the entire El Dorado County instead of focusing on a specific community of Grizzly Flats that was actually affected. This is classic bureaucratic incompetence. They're using statistical manipulation to deny assistance to people who clearly need and deserve it. It's like judging a rural farming community's need for assistance based on the wealth of Silicon Valley because they're in the same state. This is exactly why we need to drain the swamp. These federal agencies are filled with bureaucrats who have never run a business, never met a payroll, and have no idea what it's like to lose everything and start over. They sit in their comfortable offices in Washington, making decisions about real Americans' lives based on spreadsheets and arbitrary metrics that have no connection to reality on the ground. The good news is that we now have leadership that understands the America First agenda. When the FEMA administrator says he'll reach out to regional offices and the White House to find a path forward, that gives me hope. This is what real leadership looks like. You don't hide behind bureaucratic excuses. You find solutions for American citizens. But this hearing also exposed another massive problem with FEMA's operations. The discussion about call center response times revealed that during the Biden administration, FEMA wasn't answering nearly half of the incoming disaster calls. Think about that. You're in the middle of a disaster. Your house might be flooded or on fire. You're calling the government agency that's supposed to help you, and they're not even picking up the phone. That's not just incompetence. That's negligence. This is why local and state preparedness is so critical. You cannot rely on the federal government to save you when disaster strikes. Every patriot needs to have their own emergency supplies, their own backup plans, and strong community networks. The government should be there to help, but it should never be your first line of defense. The contrast between administrations couldn't be clearer. Under Trump, we had a president who actually cared about putting America and Americans first. When disasters hit, he was there. He followed through on promises, and he made sure federal agencies did their jobs. Under Biden, we got broken promises, bureaucratic incompetence, and American citizens abandoned in their time of greatest need. This hearing is a perfect example of why we need representatives who will hold these agencies accountable. Representative Kylie didn't just accept the bureaucratic runaround. She laid out the facts, exposed the broken promises, and demanded action for her constituents. That's what real representation looks like. Moving forward, we need to completely overhaul how FEMA operates. We need accountability measures. We need performance standards. And we need leadership that understands that their first responsibility is to American citizens, not to protecting the bureaucracy or advancing political agendas. The people of Grizzly Flats have been waiting years for the assistance they were promised. They've been patient. They've followed the proper channels, and they've been repeatedly let down by their own government. That ends now. With new leadership that actually believes in America First principles, these families finally have a chance to get the help they deserve. This is exactly why your vote matters, patriots. Elections have consequences, and the consequences of the Biden administration's failures are written in the faces of families still living in trailers on their burned-out properties. But with the right leadership, with people who understand that America comes first, we can start fixing these problems and restoring faith in our institutions. Make sure you stay informed about these issues, hold your representatives accountable, and never forget that the government works for us, not the other way around. If you found this analysis helpful, smash that like button, subscribe for more America First content, and let me know in the comments what other government failures you want me to expose. Until next time, keep fighting for America, patriots.